As our battle of the sexes continues, let's focus on school. So I want to ask the audience, how many of you liked school? I see more hands on the women's side, and that was my experience. I hated school. When my kids were born, the message was that school is unfair to girls, that parents should consider all girls schools because boys are so loud and dominant in classrooms. And that is what I found when I read a book to a class of first graders.
Look what happens. This boy comes from the back of the class to make a point. Soon there are 3 boys in my face commenting on the book. The girls stay seated.
Who gets the most attention in class, boys or girls?
Boys.
Why boys?
Because they talk more than the girls. The girls don't really get called on too much into class.
They have so much energy, and they're never actually that quiet.
And this girl had a theory as to why boys are quicker to raise their hands.
The boys, like, they just very loudly say what they think, and if they're wrong, they don't care.
Now, I assumed that she was right, because that happens to be my daughter who said that. And the prevailing theory at the time was that because of boys' aggressiveness, co-ed schools were just unfair to girls who were overwhelmed by the boys. But maybe things have changed, because today many educators say it's the boys who get stifled in school, and terribly. Psychologist Leonard Sax is the author of Boys Adrift, which argues that today's schools are toxic to boys. So, Doctor, your book says school takes boys' motivation away.
Boys at 7, 8 years of age will say things like, I hate school, school's stupid. And I'll ask them, why do you say that? And they'll say, well, Jason and me were throwing snowballs and we got in trouble. Or they said we could draw anything we want in art, and I drew a picture of a sword and I got in trouble. Or they said we could write a story about whatever we want, and I got in trouble.
You got in trouble for drawing a sword?
Yes, absolutely. In American public schools today, it is common for boys. Many schools have a zero-tolerance policy, which means not only can you not bring a plastic replica of a gun or a sword to school, you cannot draw a sword or a gun.
For good reason, to reduce violence.
It's an assumption which is not based in evidence. The notion is that if you don't allow boys to draw a sword, they will become gentle fairies who want to talk about their feelings. It's not true. What they do instead is they chew, I was referring to Disney fairies, okay, as in Tinkerbell. They'll chew their bread into a pistol, and again, I could give many examples of schools in the United States where a boy has chewed his piece of bread into the shape of a pistol, and he gets suspended
for that. When you were in school, you won a creative writing award.
Yeah, for writing a story in which East German refugees tried to escape to West Germany, and one of them got his legs blown off in a minefield and died. And then I visited a school very recently where 10th grade English, the assignment was to write a story about whatever you want, and this boy wrote a story, Battle of Stalingrad, winter 1942, from the perspective of a Russian soldier on patrol. And he's ambushed by a German and fires his rifle at point-blank range and describes what happens and how the head explodes, basically. And this boy was suspended from school. Boys doing things that boys have always done, throwing snowballs at one another, drawing pictures of a weapon, writing stories about traumatic amputation and death. Boys doing things that boys have always done now gets you in trouble. And that's why so many American boys say school's for girls. The boy who writes the story about the combat now gets in trouble. Instead of getting an award, as I did, he gets suspended from school. Look, when I went to high school in Ohio 30-some years ago, the kids earning the honors at the Honors Awards, the valedictorian, the editor of the school newspaper, the editor of the yearbook, they were all boys. Now they're all girls. We didn't go to 50-50. We swung the other way. Look at debate team, okay? Debate team in my high school used to be all boys. Now it's almost all girls. When did boys decide that arguing is not something boys do?
You grew up in a sexist world. Now it's more equal, and the girls took over because they're smarter.
No, the boys have decided that being a debate club is uncool because it is aligned with the academic objectives of the school. What's cool for boys today is getting to the next level in Call of Duty, in World of Warcraft. And the schools don't understand this. They don't understand that telling boys, I don't want to read the story you want to write. I don't want to read the story you want to write. I want you to write about your feelings. I want you to write a story about how you would feel if you weren't invited to the party. And what happens? This is boys say, oh, instead of writing about the Battle of Stalingrad, I'm going to write a story about how I would feel if I wasn't going to be invited to the party. The boy says, no, I'm not going to do that. The boy says, school sucks. I'm going to go home and play Call of Duty.
Stick around, Doctor, because these are touchy issues and our audience would like to question you. And our other guests. And then we'll confront some myths about gender. Are women worse drivers? And are men more likely to cheat? That's coming up. We're back with your questions for my guests. Leonard Sax, who says boys are cheated by American schools. Sean Latta, who says we need government to force schools to provide equal sports for girls, and Sabrina Schaefer, who runs the Independent Women's Forum. So first from my Facebook page. Why has no one tonight talked about the fact we have two physical standards between men and women in the military and law enforcement, or fire departments for that matter? Are we equal or not?
We do have different standards, and that's really biological. If we look at physiological differences like hormones, men have more testosterone, so they have a greater capacity of muscle mass and to be stronger.
So shouldn't men have an advantage in fire departments and combat?
The average man, but there are women who have greater strength than some men.
So why not have one test, and those women who have equal or greater strength, they get in, but we have women get to do fewer push-ups and run the mile more slowly. Why is that fair?
They have other skills as well that can be beneficial to the fire department.
Let's go to the audience. Yes.
In terms of business and technology, much of the innovation that we see coming out of these fields still seems to come mostly from men, even though women are graduating from college in greater numbers. So my question is, what do you think?
And getting master's degrees in greater
Absolutely. And what do you think are the long-term effects of this? What do you think the effects will be on the economy, for example?
Well, you're raising a really interesting question, which is what drives innovation? Steve Jobs, probably the greatest innovator of our generation, was a college dropout. Bill Gates was a college dropout. So academic achievement measured by college degrees does not reliably correlate with innovation.
So we men are just more innovative?
Well, and also we have to look at where women are placing their efforts. So many more women are getting bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and PhDs, but they're in fields that aren't necessarily the same as men. So while men are choosing to go into computer science, where we may see very tangible results in terms of innovation, women who are getting PhDs in English, you may not see the same thing. However, we are seeing a lot of women who are going into these big tech firms, for instance, the Sheryl Sandbergs, the Virginia Romneys of IBM. Microsoft just hired another C-suite
But they are the exception.
Right, but they are influencing this innovation.
Who's got the mic over here?
You said that the Title IX you felt was necessary beyond the social changes, that if it wasn't for that, we'd still be in the Stone Ages. I was just wondering how you would explain a relatively new sport such as mixed martial arts or cage fighting. It's barely been around for 20 years. Already there's females in a number of major organizations without any sort of law that required them to do that. You know, how did that come about without a basic societal change?
Title IX was passed in 1972, so it's over 40 years now that Title IX has impacted social beliefs. And so now in 2013...
So the law changed people's attitudes? It wasn't the reverse?
Well, it opened the doors for women to have opportunities.
Would you say it's still necessary, or would you say that the change has been accomplished?
Yeah, get rid of it.
I say absolutely not, because even so, the National Women's Law Center estimates at least 70% of colleges and universities are still not in compliance with Title IX. And so we still have a ways to go. Because the boys want to play sports. If I throw the football with these guys, I know that'll happen. If I throw it to the girls,
Good
okay,
job.
all right. We're out of time. Thank you, Leonard, Sean, Sabrina. Coming up, women drivers and philandering men. Is what people say about them true? We test some myths. Finally, a couple myths about differences between the sexes. Is it true that women are bad drivers, or at least worse than men? What do you think? Let me ask you, how many of you think, raise your hand, that women are worse drivers? So the men, not the women, say it. Well, I say, as with all these myths, there is some truth to it. This video, which has been watched more than 1 million times, illustrates what I think's true. Women often just aren't very good at maneuvering a car. Maybe it's about brain differences relating to depth perception or something. But in this parking lot, a woman tries to park again and again, but she just cannot get into the parking space. Finally, a man gets out of his car, switches places with the woman driver, and he's quickly able to park her car. Then he gets back into his. One comment on the website said, "Women should be in the kitchen, not at the steering wheel." But when it comes to bad driving, what is the best measure? Parking? Not really. Driving without hitting things matters more, and by that measure, we men are much worse, much more likely to crash a car. This is a graph of deadly car accidents since 1975. The good news is that the total has gone down. Either cars are safer or most everyone drives better, or both. But the clear difference between the two lines shows that men crash cars more often. As one research review put it, men drive faster than women, we're more likely to speed, drive drunk, run stop signs, and we crash twice as often as women do. In the U.S., men cause 71% of all deaths on the road. Now, of course, men drive more miles than women, but even when miles and driving hours are factored in, we men still get into more accidents and hurt more people. Based on that, you got to say women are better drivers. But men are more likely to be unfaithful, to cheat on their partners. So, is that true? I'll ask the audience again. How many of you have cheated on your spouse or your boyfriend? All right, you're not going to give me an honest answer. But anonymous surveys and popular culture suggest that men are more likely to cheat. And evolution may be the reason. For thousands of years, a woman knew her children were more likely to survive if she found a man who would stay and help protect her and the kids. Women who partnered with such men were more likely to pass their genes on to future generations. By contrast, men were more likely to pass on their genes if they had sex with lots of women and fathered lots of kids. And today we're told women want a committed relationship and men want variety. Right?
I am deeply sorry that I did not live up to what was expected of me.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
So, are men more likely to cheat? A Kinsey Institute study found 19% of women and 23% of men reported cheating. So men are more likely to cheat. But the numbers are close. Cheating isn't just a guy thing. And on that note, that's our show for tonight. There are more myths in my book about myths. Often, what we think we know is just not so. See you next week.